Hello and welcome to a special kickoff edition of the Touchdown Show for the 2024 NFL season. I'm Gilles Gallant with the Action Network, along with Brian Matthews, aka the BMAT. BMAT, we are back for season 3 of the Touchdown Show with the Action Network. And today, we're going to cover the anytime touchdown market for the NFL opener between the Baltimore Ravens and Kansas City Chiefs. And then we're going to look at the touchdown odds as well for Friday Night Football featuring the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles. So, Brian, before we start, I have 2 questions for you. First question is, what do you think of the opening matchups that the NFL gave us for week 1? And 2, is there any more indication that summer is over once you look in your sports book and you see NFL anytime touchdown scorers?
Yeah, 2 very good questions. First, I just have to say, opening the books, and I think it was like 5, maybe 3 or 4 weeks back, when I think it was DraftKings, right, that rolled out all of the anytime touchdown props. I may or may not have made a few too many parlays, but
Yeah.
we brought ourselves back in. We're back in the fold. But to get to your first question, I like the matchups. I think we've got 2 really good games to start off the year. I think it's kind of kind of trying to figure out how the environment is going to affect the Eagles-Packers game, but I think that's going to be a fun one because it's going to be, new for both teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the Ravens and Chiefs, I mean, we just saw that game in the AFC title game back in January. And then, of course, Packers Eagles, they're going to be playing in Brazil. So we'll see how much free time that they had, considering they were pretty much told to stay in their hotel rooms until game time. But now, as always, we're going to have our best touch bets each game. And then we're going to do some anytime touchdown, same game parlays, a little bit of pizza money for each game as well. Try to get something maybe 10-1, 11-1. But let's start with now Thursday Night Football. Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs are defending 2-time Super Bowl champions, and they open as 3-point favorites against the Ravens with an over-under of 46. And BMAT, when we look at the touchdown odds, who do we have right at the top? You've got Derrick Henry, their shiny new toy, around minus 120. Then you've got a pair of Chiefs at plus 110 in Isaiah Pacheco and Travis Kelce, and then Rashee Rice at plus 165. Then you've got Xavier Worthy at plus 180. Then we start seeing some Ravens players like Mark Andrews, plus 187. Then you've got Zay Flowers at plus 210. Lamar Jackson at plus 235. Rounding out the top 10, though, is Rashad Bateman at plus 400 and Patrick Mahomes at plus 400. Now, before we talk about who we're liking for bets here, what's your first impression when you saw those odds? Right now, those are the best odds from all different sportsbooks that are available. Right now, based off the hop, it seems wise that Derrick Henry would be minus 120 off the top.
Yeah, the odds make sense. I think if you look at the projected point total, they're expecting a decent amount of points. So it's not like, we've got a game with a 36.5 point, projected total. I think, there's some decent odds. And as you and I always note, as it gets closer to game time, some of these odds might even get a little bit better. But yeah, it definitely makes sense. You're talking the Baltimore Ravens, a team that loves to run the ball, and Derrick Henry, a guy who just scores touchdowns. So the odds make sense.
And not only that, I mean, you look at the top 10 guys, it's like everybody is a known name. Like if you play fantasy football, every single guy is drafted. You know what I mean? Like, and they're not like the last round pick either, right? Like, and what's crazy too, Xavier Worthy at plus 180, a rookie, especially with Rashee Rice playing. One thing I'd like to tell people when we go back last year, when we were trying to figure out who's going to be the receiving threat for the Chiefs, Rashee Rice opened around plus 450 to score. He ended up scoring in week 1, but we weren't sure if it was going to be Justin Ross. Is it Rashee Rice? Is it Marquez Valdes-Scantling? So the odds are kind of skewed in certain places. But again, that is the Chiefs premium. That is primetime games. They tend to get steamed, especially for the first game. But there is one guy, though, of that top 10, BMAT, that I think we both love. And I think this is going to be my best bet for Chiefs Ravens, and that is Zay Flowers. So I took Zay Flowers at plus 210. That was at Bet365. Now, Flowers scored a touchdown in 5 of his final 7 games, if you include the playoff games. When I was going through this too, B-Matt, we talked off air. I was going back and forth between Zay, maybe even Mark Andrews. I wanted somebody who was operating out of the slot. And I ended up going with Zay because when you look at how he emerged in this offense after Mark Andrews went down last year, he was Lamar Jackson's go-to wide receiver. 4 touchdowns in 6 games without Andrews. And then, of course, this Chiefs secondary, very top rated. But they did regress a little bit. L'Jarius Sneed is gone. He would cover a lot of wide receivers in the slot. I mean, he was all over the place defensively for them last year. I think he's a bigger loss than people are letting on. And I think
Yeah.
that what's going to happen now, that's going to probably make the Chiefs have to play a little bit more zone because they ranked top 5 in man coverage last year. And now Zay entering his second year. You know, last year, I think people tend to forget he was a rookie. I think he could be even better, more explosive, more efficient in this offense. And I'd be remiss not to mention, B-Matt, about the AFC title game. It's a bit of a revenge game narrative, given how he fumbled in that AFC title game, maybe even cost them the game, depending on how you view it. But I still think Zay Flowers is the guy we want at plus 210. So that's who I'm taking. B-Matt, are we starting the year off with a collab?
Oh yeah, no, it's
Oh, baby.
it's officially a collab. I love this play. I think the odds don't make a ton of sense to me. The volume is there, like you said. He was a rookie last year, so anytime you have a rookie wide receiver, that has a great first year, and then especially finishes the year off strong. And when we go back to Baltimore, the one thing they talked about for years with Lamar Jackson's like they don't have a wide receiver one, they don't have a weapon, so they go draft Zay Flowers in the first round. Now he's got, a full off season under his belt. And I just think they're going to find ways to get him the ball. It's funny. I forgot about the fumble until we talked off air. So I love the extra wrinkle. I just think Zay Flowers is going to see plenty of volume in a game where, yes, you could look at it and say, all right, Derrick Henry, but there's not much value there. And I just think that the odds on this one make it too appetizing for me.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing too is, speaking with some people before the season started, people ask me, well, what do you think of Rashad Bateman? And Bateman just hasn't gotten even though he did get extended in the offseason. So clearly the Ravens see something and want him to be part of the offense. But so far, he's just not justifying that kind of price at plus 400. He's just not scoring that many touchdowns. And if anything, his snap counts was starting to go down. He was losing snaps to like guys like Nelson Aguilar last year as well. So I think Zay is the guy that we want. So it's Zay Day for the first day of the NFL season. We're both going to take him at plus 210. But since we like Zay Flowers, why don't we throw him on a same game parlay? And we're going to actually pair him up with Derrick Henry for a touchdown. And we're also going to have a third leg of this parlay, Isaiah Pacheco for a touchdown. Right now, those odds are around 10 to 1 at both DraftKings and Bet365. Now, we just talked about why we like Zay. Derrick Henry, I mean, he's their shiny new toy. He's going to be the one who's getting a boatload of carries in the red zone. Isaiah Pacheco, he has been incredible as well. He's scored, I believe, 7 touchdowns in the final 8 games for the Chiefs going into the year. I think the run games are going to be heavily focused on as well for offense. I think that Derrick Henry, Pacheco, and Flowers is the 3 touchdown bets we need to make for the first game. What do you think, Brian?
Amen.
Simple as that.
It's
He's
easy.
in.
Look, I mean, I could have said, hey, look, maybe we should look at throwing Carson Steele in, but I'm actually surprised that's not who you suggested. It was a long shot. But no, I love this parlay. All 3 legs make a lot of sense. Let's run it.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not going to sleep on Pacheco. Pacheco is somebody, especially around the plus 110. He would probably be, in my opinion, the safest bet of touchdown bets. But we don't do safe around here. We try to get a little bit of value here. So that's Thursday Night Football. We're both on Zay Flowers. We've got a same game parlay as well for that. Now let's move to Friday Night Football being played in Brazil between the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles slight favorites around 2.5. with an over-under of 48.5. So they are expecting a little bit of more scoring as well in this game compared to Thursday Night Football. And right off the top, again, shiny new toy. You've got Saquon Barkley at minus 105, who's probably running behind the best offensive line he's ever played against, or played with, rather. Then you've got Jalen Hurts right behind him at plus 110. He's been top 3 in red zone carries in each of the last 3 seasons. Then Josh Jacobs, you got Derrick Henry light, in certain spots here around plus 120. Then a pair of receiving options for the Eagles, A.J. Brown at plus 125, Devontae Smith at plus 170. Then you start to see the Packers receivers. You got Jaden Reed at plus 210, Christian Watson at plus 220, Dallas Goedert, Romeo Doubs, and Luke Musgrave round out the top 10. B-Matt, I went first, but before we talk about these, I just wanted to ask you again, same thing about the odds here. Is there anything immediately that just stands out as like a red flag? Maybe somebody that you wouldn't want to play based on the odds that you see?
No, there wasn't anything where I saw that was like, all right, I can't touch this at this odds. I think the one thing I'll be interested to see is, what the what the brotherly shove looks like this year without Kelsey. So, I don't imagine it's gonna, miss too many beats, but we'll have to see if there's anything that comes from that. Because I'm seeing Jalen Hurts, in some places at plus money, at least plus 110 somewhere. So, when we haven't seen that in a while, I think it'll be interesting to see.
The other thing too with AJ Brown is the one that I get a little conflicted with when it comes to betting on touchdown scores because he's obviously an amazing offensive threat. But at
Yeah.
plus 125, I'm not sure if I love the touchdown value, specifically because they don't really use him too much in the red zone. The Eagles, at least in the last 3 seasons, when they get to the red zone, they run the ball for the most part. And now you've got Barkley there. I mean, he had
Mhm.
15 red zone targets last year. That's, outside the top 10 from wide receivers. Usually you would see, somebody who is considered a stud like that,
Yeah.
around plus 110, maybe even almost minus odds like a Tyreek Hill or CD Lamb. So at plus 125, this isn't me saying that AJ Brown won't score. This is me just saying I wish that we had a little bit more value on him given that how they use him in this offense. And also just the fact that you've got an amazing wide receiver on the other side in Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
Okay, so I went first last time. Why don't
Yeah.
you go first? Who is your best bet for Packers Eagles?
All right, so I'm going to go back to one of the long shots that I hit last year, and that, if you recall, would have been a Jaden Reed first touchdown score. So I'm not playing the same thing, but going to the same player. I'm going to play Jaden Reed anytime touchdown at plus 210. I love the value here, and I think if you look back to last year, I understand that Christian Watson, missed a number of games, but he was tied with Romeo Dobbs for the lead in red zone targets, 17. He was a dependable weapon for Jordan Love. And this is the guy where you just said we were talking about, Zay Flowers. It's like, yeah, people are forgetting he was a rookie last year. So, well,
Mm-hmm.
so was this guy. He was a second round pick out of Michigan State who actually outshined Keon Coleman, who's now with the Bills. So I think, I think Jaden Reed, I got to go with a guy who's been good to me, especially on the first touchdown score front. So, yeah, I'm going to go anytime touchdown, Jaden Reed. I just think that Bryce loves progression. As he started to play better, I think Jaden Reed's participation, pardon me, increased. And also, you look at the fact that he had 2 rushing touchdowns. So it's not just a guy that, all right, he's a receiver, he's out there. It's all right, we'll find ways to get him the ball in space.
Exactly. And that's my biggest clapback when people would talk about Reed, about him not being out there for 2 wide receiver sets, because
Yeah.
for the most part, when they do 2 wide receiver sets, it's going to be Dobbs or Christian Watson. But
Yep.
they have shown that they're going to find ways to keep him involved. And I'm glad you brought up that first touchdown bet angle, because I was going to mention that you hit him for a first touchdown bet
Yeah.
last year. And Jaden Reed for first touchdown bettors was huge last year. He finished third overall in profits. If you had bet 1 unit on his first touchdown in every game last year because he hit 4, you would have made like 63 units in profit. Like, it was just ridiculous of how awesome he was and how effective they were
Yeah.
using him to start games as well. And I'm about to pick apart the Romeo Dobbs angle as well, because there's somebody that I prefer from a wide receiver standpoint on the
Let's
Packers
go.
side, and it's Christian Watson. And I'm going to be taking Christian Watson at plus 220. Okay, so let's talk about Watson here. 5 touchdowns last year, but the elephant in the room, he dealt with hamstring injuries pretty much all year. Like, I probably did way more research on hamstring injuries than I probably should have to before locking in this bet. But he did. Here's the encouraging news. In his final 3 regular season games, this is before he got hurt, he did score 4 touchdowns, and then he came back in the playoffs, but was still pretty limited. I think he was still hurt as well. Well, reportedly, he has been healthy for all of training camp,
There you go.
OTAs, training camp, hasn't missed a snap, hasn't missed a practice. And why we want Watson over somebody like Romeo Dobbs is Watson has the bigger playability. He has a higher A dot. And when you look back last year, those 17 red zone targets, most of Dobbs' big games last year was when Christian Watson was out. 9 of Dobbs' 17 red zone targets were in the first 3 games of the season last year. And guess who didn't play? Christian Watson. And then now we're playing this Eagles secondary that I'm not sure that they really improved from last year. And they allowed the second most touchdowns to wide receivers last year. They were 29th in defensive
Yeah.
DVOA versus the pass. Cornerback James Bradbury is out. Darius Slay, I mean, he's a year older. So if Christian Watson is back and healthy, this is a prime matchup for him to come back. And I think we won't see prices over plus 200 again for him if he scores in week 1. So Christian Watson plus 220 is my best bet for Packers Eagles. B-Matt, you are on Jaden Reed at plus 210. Love that play as well. But let's talk about what we're going to do for the same game parlay. Right now, I think, what do you think, B-Matt? Do you think we should just go with Watson instead of Reed here off the hop?
Yeah, let's
All right,
let's go Watson. I think if you're going to go Watson, the safest time to do it's week one, right? He's had the longest amount of time to get healthy.
Exactly.
It might be the only week you don't have to worry about the hamstrings before the game. So let's go Watson.
All right, so we're going Watson with the injury risk attached, but knowing that week one, we're getting a healthy Watson at least.
Yeah.
And we're going to pair him with the running backs. I think we have to put Saquon Barkley on this one. And I really like Josh Jacobs as well to score.
Yeah.
Right now, that parlay is around 11-1 at FanDuel. I think this is a great way to start Thursday and Friday, especially with these three guys in this matchup.
Hey, if these guys do well, I'm very happy because we do well on the show. My fantasy football teams start the year off well, and my bets do well. So it's going to be a great weekend. So let's get after it.
All right. Well, B-Matt, that's all for today for us. 2 picks from me, 2 picks for you. We've got a collab on deck. We've got a couple same game parlays. Scratch that parlay itch. I want to remind everybody that the Touchdown Show will be back here for week 1 on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, live right after Convince Me during the Action Network Power Hour. We're going to be here every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Now, if you missed the show, you want to get our picks, best way to do that, download the Action app. All of our touchdown bets are tracked there. You can get them as soon as we bet them with pick notifications. So I'm Gilles Gallant. This is Brian Matthews. I want to thank you again for joining us for our special early kickoff of the Touchdown Show for the 2024 NFL season. We'll see you on Sunday. Bon chance.